really difficult to run this thing along the timber. So typically what I will do is I'll just get some automotive wet dry sandpaper or something like that, and I will sand it down a little bit and get the burrs off. Now it ruins your sandpaper, aluminum, but it's you got to do it, otherwise it's a nightmare to try and run this thing along the timber. Now the heavier things are, you probably noticed this from me handling it, the heavier things are, the more difficult it is to handle things carefully. And because this is 45 or 50 pounds, it's very easy to set this down a little bit too rough. A client was helping with a job one time and set it down a little bit too roughly on one corner, and it burred up this corner, which was fairly easy to fix, but unfortunately cracked the part of this main casting that kind of serves as a guide for the depth of cut adjustment, and there's no real practical way to replace this. So I'm just going to have to live with the fact that the adjustment can go a little bit cockeyed on you. Anyway, so just be careful when you set it down. I need to change the knives in this thing, so let's walk through that, and then what we'll do is we'll take it up to the big shop, give it a test run, and see how it works. So what's nice is you're actually supplied with a little T-handle tool for removing the bolts that holds the knives in place, and a convenient little storage spot right on the machine itself. And that actually works. I've never lost a thing. So that's great for kind of field removal or field swapping of the knives. But if you're in the shop, I do prefer a socket and ratchet set. So let's flip this thing over. Now all you have to do is loosen these. You don't have to actually take them off. Okay, so all these are loosened, and all you have to do is carefully slide the knife out. What you need to do is get them lined up with this little slot here so that it will slide out from this side. Okay, so now often what happens when you do this, you get a little bits of debris that fall in there, and that could get in the way of the knife being reinstalled properly. So you want to brush that out. And what I find the best tool for doing that is my wife's toothbrush. Then it's just a matter of flipping or replacing the knife. Then you want to tighten these back down, starting at the center and working your way out this way. The way I typically do it is I'll do it in 2 steps. I'll kind of just snug them down by hand quickly, and then repeat it all, and I typically will use a torque wrench to do that. Now, here's a $1 million tip for you. There's a little bit of wiggle room as to where these things go, left or right. And what I do is I deliberately set them up on opposite ends of that wiggle room. What that means is if the knives are still sharp but you've gotten a little nick in them, what you can do is offset them the opposite way from the way you started, and often the ridge associated with that little nick will go away. Okay, so obviously we'll repeat that on the other side. Now, one more quick pointer before we go up to the big shop where the sound isn't as good. You want these knives to last as long as possible. So accordingly, you want to take as few passes along the timber as absolutely possible to get the job done. So don't be afraid to increase the depth of cut within reason if it means you still get the surface finish you want and you're not bogging down the motor too much. So within the normal kind of operating range, one heavier cut dulls the knives less than 2 lighter passes. So then what I'll do is I'll check for burrs on the bottom, sand them down like I described before if necessary. And then what I do is I put a light film of Bow Shield T9 on there. It's designed for aluminum and works really well. If at all possible, I'll put it on, say, the night before, and I'll let it dry and then buff it off. But even just putting it on wet like this and then buffing it off really quickly works really well. I've never had a problem with it affecting the finish, but it makes it a lot easier to move down along the timber. The spray version of this is actually much easier to use than this, but that is up at my big shop. Okay, so let's head up to the big shop and see how we made out.